A REST API call is like a Google search. You do a request and get a response back. The request is made by putting in a URL. Here we use this URL in this video. You can find the URL in the video description below. I strongly encourage you to do these exercises with me. You will learn 10 times faster. So we will use this URL for making the API call, and the response we get back is in XML format. You'll see it here. These are, by the way, currencies from the Danish National Bank. So here you can see we have a root element in this XML file called exchange rates. We have a child element called daily rates, and that has an attribute with the ID of a date. That is the date the currency data are from. Then we have several child elements called currencies, and you can see each one of them has a code, so we can refer to them. For example, let's say I want a British pound sterling. I can refer to the code called GBP. And then I might want to get the attribute called rate. That one is over here. Let's see how we can do a REST API call and parse the XML afterwards. My name is Anders Jensen. Let's learn some Microsoft Power Automate for desktop. So I go into my Microsoft Power Automate desktop flow. The first thing I want to do is to create a project folder for the entire project. So I right click on my desktop, say new folder. I will call this XML project like this. I also want to grab the path of this folder. To do so, I press Shift in on my keyboard. I repeat, Shift in on your keyboard and then right click. You'll see the copy as path. It only works when you press Shift in. So copy as path. Go back to Power Automate for desktop. Let's create a variable for this path. That is best practice in RPA development and Power Automate for desktop development. So we'll call it something. Let's just call it project path like this and press enter. Then the value, I can just press Ctrl V. That will put in this path. Remember to move the double quotation mark in the end, and in the start, you can click save. The clever thing now is that we can just refer to this path whenever we want to, or to this variable whenever we want to use the path value. That is clever because imagine that this project will get moved to a client's computer or a colleague's computer. Then we can just easily change this variable. Now let's create the API call. We'll do that by an invoke web service here. Drag it in. Here we need the URL, and that was the URL that we talked about. It's in the video description below. So Ctrl-C, copy the URL in here and paste it in here. The method we're using, that is get. We're getting something down, we're getting some data down. Some other common methods that is post, where we post things to, for example, a web server, or we can delete things there. But we are using get. We also want to go down to save response. Now we are saving it into a variable. That's fine. We will save it into a file in a little while. The variables produced. We have web service response headers. That is headers after the response. Then we have the web service response. That will be our XML file. And then we have a status code indicating if it was a success or not. So I can click save here. Try to run the flow, and you'll see that over here in web service response, you can go in, hover your mouse over here, double click, there you go. We now have our XML that we can work on. It looks a little bit weird, and we will need to apply a technique to get the data out we want from this. But congratulations, you made your API call. What I want to do first is that I want to go in here, and instead of getting the text into a variable, click this drop down, save to disk. I also want to specify the full path. So click this little drop down, specify full path. Now I just give the full path where I want to save this XML to, so I can work with it. The first part we already created up here, that was the project path. So click this little X here, and then click project path. Then you'll say backward slash, and then we can say currency rates.xml like this, and I click save. So now we just save it to a file, and when I run it, you'll see that, let me minimize this. we have it out here in the project folder, XML project, currencyrates.xml. I can right click, then I can open with Notepad. There you go. We have now saved the XML file to our project folder. That was easy, wasn't it? Now we just need to parse these things out. And let me just move back to Power Automate for desktop. So we need to read this XML thing. So I find a read XML from file here and drag that one in. The file path, well, we just use the file path up here. So in order to make no mistakes at all, I just say save, that will give us an error. Fine, go into invoke web service and just copy this path here. You're welcome to write it, but I always recommend copy pasting it. Will reduce the risk of errors. I don't always remember it myself, but I try to do. So here, Control V, paste in this. You can see that we are having read into a variable called XML document. I can click save. Now we can start working with the attributes that we want to get out. That was for example, the British pound rate. So I go up here, then I'll say get XML element attribute. I can drag it in here. We're reading from the XML document. That is fine. That was the one that we created up here. Then it'll say XPath query. XPath is very easy to learn, but I recommend spending a little bit of time on it. And let me show you what it is. So we can just say we want to go to a specific part in the XML tree. So first we'll say I can refer to this root element. I can do that by having a /. That means root elements start here. But we can also do a little bit easier thing. I just want to get to a currency element. In that way, I'll have 2 /. So that means I'll start in a child element. And here I'll just say currency like this. And then I just want to say, I want to get a currency with the code British pound sterling. So let me just copy here, Control C and drag it in here. Here I need some hard bracket, then an @ like you know in an email. Control V, paste it in. Then instead of these double quotation mark, make single quotation marks like this, and then a hard bracket end. So now we're saying we want the currency element with the code GBP. That is this element here. Then I want to say I want the attribute called rate. So I just copy this one here and paste it in here. Now we get the rate. Let's also rename it so it says XML attribute value rate like this, and then I can click save. Now let's just see if we can get the British pound sterling rate, which is, we can either find it here or in the browser, which is 823.86 if it hasn't changed since we ran it first. There you go, you can see it over here. 823.86. We have parsed it. That's how easy it is to parse XML data. Similarly, we can get the date out. So I just drag this one in. And let's see how we can get date out. Now I just want to look in daily rates and the attribute called ID. So what I can do here is I can say I want a child element called daily rates and the attribute called ID. I want to store it in XML attribute value date, and I do these things that is best practice to rename my variables, because in that way it's very easy to see what's going on. Later on it's just having random names. There you go, we have our names. Now let's just solve a case where we expand this a bit. So I downloaded the Excel book here. You can find that in the description below as well. I urge you to do that because we will solve this case. We will go to 3A Magic. Here we have it. Here I want to make an API call for each one of these ISO codes, that is currency codes. Then I want to put in the rate of these ones here. And remember that that is in the Danish kroners DKK, that is the base currency because it's from the Danish National Bank. So I want to get each one of them in the correct place. And then I want a date in. Let's see what we can do here. And that is quite easy. So let's just fix our flow a bit that we already built so we don't need to rebuild it from scratch because we already have something. Each time the robot runs, we save the file, and right now we overwrite it over and over. I want this robot to, for example, run every day, every week, and then I want to save the XML file so I have some log data about the currency rates. What I will do here is that I'll say get current date and time like this, and drag it in right after the set variable. This will just give us a date time variable of the current run. That will be when the robot runs. Then I also want to convert this, so I'll find a convert date time to text like this, drag it in right after the get current date and time. The date time to convert, that is the current date and time. So I just go up here, I'll choose the custom format, then I can specify the format myself. That is easy, and this is another great skill to have as an RPA developer, know how to work with date and times. You will use that a lot. So then I'll say hours, minute. If you want to get better in RPA development, Power Automate for desktop development, you should join my Discord. That's free. We are more than 4,000 developers helping each other, networking, upgrading our careers. The link to my Discord is in the description below, and it's totally free. So here we save this in a formatted date time, and now we can use it in the invoke web service. So I open this one here. Then I want to make this dynamic where I use the date of the run of the robot. So right before currency rates, make sure your mouse is there. Click this little X here, then take the formatted date time. I also want an underscore between those two, so I just do it like this. And I will copy everything, Control C, I'll click Save, and then I'll change it in Read XML from File. So here I'll just I will delete whatever was there before, and then just paste it in. I can click Save. Let's see if this works, that we create a unique file whenever we run the robot. There you go. We now have the unique file, and let me just open it so you can see that we actually open it. So we create a unique file with a timestamp on. So that means that whenever I run the robot again, it will just create a new file. That will do it over and over. Pretty clever, isn't it? Now let's read our Excel sheet with these rates in. So what I want to do here is that I just want to grab this sheet name, because imagine that we have opened another sheet. Then when the robot runs, it will read from this. So we need to make completely sure that we grab the correct sheet. It is also best practice, make your robots robust. Right click, rename, Control C to copy this one out. Now we can just close it. So what I want to do is to launch an Excel sheet. So after I made this request, then I want to launch Excel. Yes. I find a launch Excel and drag it in here. I want to open up the following document. So what document do I need to open? Well, I need to open the project path, then backward slash, and we have the currency data. That one is, let me just save it here. That one was on my desktop, so I'll just move it inside the XML project. So now it's here, so I'll just read it from the project path as well. And let me go back here, go in here. So we have the project path, and then we'll say currency data.xlsx. Here we should really, imagine that I misspelled this. We will have an error. So what we can do here, now I'll open it. It's going great. What I can do here is that I can just right click, rename, and then copy everything here to make completely sure that I don't misspell it. Of course, we will just get an error. Well, we spelled it right. We will just get an error. But I like to always copy paste when I remember it. Make instance visible, untick that. And there's nothing else to do. We just click save. Now we can set the active Excel worksheet. So a little bit laggy here. So set active, let me search for it. There you go. So here I need to open up the Excel sheet again, because now I have some other things in my clipboard. So I'll just do this, open up the currency data. Here I need to save the sheet name, Control C, and copy the 3A magic over. So here I'm just activating it by the name. That's all I do. Let's also close it. Power Automate for Desktop has a terrible habit about locking our Excel books if we don't close them properly. So I'll have a close Excel. Let's save it here and say a save. So now we're launching it, setting the active Excel worksheet and closing it. Let's also read from it. So we read the data that's in the sheet. You'll do that with a read from Excel worksheet. Drag that one in before the close and after the set active, like this. We want to not retrieve the value from a single cell, but from a range of cells. And let's just see what range we want. We open it again. We want everything from, we want it from A1, that is up here. We also want the headers on. And then we want to end in the end row 8 and the column D. We don't need the Danish kroners because that is our base currencies. We can't even find it in this XML. So A1 to D8, that's where we want to move. Let me just close it again. So if I go in here, I'll say A and I'll say 1. The end column is D, and then we'll say end row was 8. Now go into advanced. First line of range contains column names. I can click save. Let's try to run it and see that it actually works. We're launching the Excel and then we're setting the active sheet. We're closing it again. We didn't do anything other than reading. But if you go over here to Excel data, you can see that we now have our data that we can work with. Now we need to iterate through each one of these rows, and then we'll do the XML parse. So first, one thing at a time, let's find a for each. Here, drag it in after the read from Excel worksheet, but before the close Excel. The value to iterate, that is the Excel data, like this. We can see we store it into a current item variable. That is just a variable that we refer to that represents each one of the rows that we're iterating through. So that is a data row. You can see a data table as a collection of data rows. So this refers to the current row that we're iterating through. So we'll use that in a little while. So right now we got the XML file. That was one file with all the currency rates. We want to do one get XML attribute for each one of these currencies in the Excel sheet. So go up here, press Control in, mark these two, say Control X like this. Press with your left mouse the end here, that is important. Then you can just press Control V. We paste them in here. Now we need to do a little bit of, we need to update these, but first we will, before the for each, we'll need a helping variable. That is to count where we add in our data table. So first we add row 0. Let me just show you. Because in a data table, the first row is named 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll make a variable called Excel row index like this. And let me just fix that one here. So set variable like this. And now here I will say the variable that will be Excel row index like this. And we will have it as 0. Then I can click save. So now we started at 0. Then we just need to add 1 to it in each one of the for eaches. So go up here. And then we'll say the variable, that one will be Excel row index. And if you like these videos, please give it a thumbs up. That will help me a lot. Thank you. That is highly appreciated if you want to give it a thumbs up. So then I'll say Excel row index plus 1. We add 1 to it. Now, so we get the date. That is fine. We'll update each one of the rows with this date. But this get XML element attribute, that is quite static. You can see GBP. And if I open up my Excel sheet here, I want it to not be GDP, but whatever is in the ISO column. That one was the second column. So in our data table, it will be the first column. So what I can do here is that I can go back here, and instead of this GBP, I can just remove this. And I can say current item here. And then I can say I want to look in whatever is in the first, the 1th column, that will be the 2nd column. So I'll just do like this. And this one will give us each one of them as they progresses. So the current item, that will be the current data row, and then we will look up whatever ISO code is in there. You can click save. So now we can just update the data table. And what we will do here is that we will find a update data table item here, drag it in here. So we need to update 2 things there. We need to update the rate and the date. So the data table that we want to update, that will be the Excel data. The column that we want to update the rate in, and let me just, here. So the rate, that will be in the 4th column, that's number 3, and the date is in number 2. Look like this. Let's go in here again. So the column, that will be column 3. The row, well, that will be the Excel row index. So I just go up here like this. And then the new value, well, that will be the rate that we just got up here, XML attribute rate. So we already got that one like this, and then we click save. Similarly, we have an update data table item like this. So data table, Excel data. And then that column, that was the 2. This one will be the date. So here, so the row, that will be the Excel row index. And then the new value, that will be the XML attribute called date like this. Then we can click save. So we also need to save. So now we updated the data table. We read it up here, but now we updated it. We also need to save it back to Excel. Very, very easy. So find a write to Excel worksheet, drag it in after the for each. So we update the data table, and after we're done with the for each, we write it back to Excel. What value do we want to write? We want to write the Excel data like this. We want to write it on a specified cell, column A, row 2. Let's see if everything works. Let me make sure that my Excel sheet is closed. And then I'll click run. So this is a great case of API calls and XML parsing. You'll see that we get our rates here. We are running it around 8 times. Let's inspect our Excel sheet and see that we have everything right. There you go. We got the dates and rates. Click the video up here for the next advanced Power Automate for desktop use case. I'm Jensen. See you.